First of all, I want to start this evening by saying thank you for welcoming me back. I want us to say a special word of thanks to Father Wall, to Jan Boxell from the Parr Institute, and to the Provost for his very nice and generous introduction. It really is good to be home. And as Jim said, this literally was my home. That little office in the back corner there to the left of the restroom was where I lived for my senior year in college. I was responsible for opening and closing the building in the morning and at night. I was also responsible for starting the chair ministry. A long time ago, we used to have to pick up these chairs and put them away after Mass on every Sunday and then put them back out every Saturday. So I feel a special bond to these chairs. I suspect looking at them, they are the same chairs. They've just been refurbished a bit since I was here. My topic tonight, I do a fair amount of public speaking, but my topic tonight is one that is certainly in this expanded form new for me. It's one that I will tell you at times can be a little bit emotional and personal for me. So I hope you'll bear with me as I go through it on that front. But I hope it delivers a few messages that you find meaningful and enjoyable. I'm going to begin by asking what I'll say is sort of a philosophical question. And it relates to my background in business and the work that I do today. And it's a simple question that is the word business ethics, is that phrase an oxymoron? Is it possible to be successful, truly successful in business, and be someone who feels like they have an ethical approach to the work they do and to the life they lead? And I'm not going to talk about that directly, but I'm going to come back to it in the end, and hopefully I'll be able to tie that question together with the topic of faith, perseverance, and serendipity. So let's begin with faith. Now for me, faith is what I think of as the DNA, the genetic material of living an ethical life. It's the core things you believe in that lead you into a space that is ethical and moral. Now, on a very general level, faith has a more simple meaning. It's just simply the ability to believe in something. And that's really where I want to start. When we started Xbox in 1999, and I'm going to use a lot of Xbox examples, none of which involve gaming, so you don't have to be an Xbox player to get it. But when we started Xbox in 1999, it was truly the craziest thing you could possibly imagine for us to do. We had about 20 people who, a few of whom knew something about video games. We'd never built hardware larger than a mouse. We did our first business review at which the project was approved and told Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer that in the first 5 years the project would lose $2 billion. And they looked at us and said, great, get on with it. And the initial project was start from scratch. You have 18 months and 20 people, build the most powerful game console on the market and ship it on time. And we said, oh sure, no problem. And I will tell you that wasn't easy. We worked through that. We shipped the product on time. Come forward now with me 3 years, and we're proposing to them that we do the next version of Xbox, now called Xbox 360. And the marketing people explained to me sometime where we got 360. But anyway, we went from Xbox original to Xbox 360. And we came and told them, and at this point, they looked at us and said, okay, so what's your business model? And I had to admit, at that point, Xbox hadn't lost $2 billion. It had lost, depending on how you do the counting, about $7 billion. So we had to come and propose to them to do it all again. And to believe us that we would make money this time. And that we'd learned some lessons, we'd done the expensive part, and now was the time to harness and benefit from all the work that we'd done. And I will tell you, as somebody who worked on that project, somebody who led that project, belief, faith, maybe with a small s, but faith, was an essential part of what got us through that. It's what enabled the people who were approving the project to be willing to spend the money. They believed in the team. They believed in our ability. They believed we knew how to learn lessons. And it's what gave me the ability to keep people motivated and to get them to do their very, very, very best work, because that's what it would take. And so faith in that context was to me a very important concept. And that's purely a business statement. If you wanted to work on Xbox, if you wanted to do what it took to get that done, you had to believe. So that's faith at, let's say, sort of a small f perspective. Now, clearly, for me and my background, faith has a larger context and connotation to me as well. So I think of this as faith with a capital F, if you will. A deeper meaning, a deeper sense of purpose, and a deeper sense of responsibility. And to talk about faith in this context, I'm going to talk a bit about my mom. So this is often an emotional topic for me, so bear with me when we get there. When I grew up, I was very active, played 5 sports, was good at most of them. In the 7th grade, I grew 8 inches in 1 year. And as a consequence of that, my back developed a 40-degree forward curve in my spine. I had a disease that was called kyphosis. If you've ever heard of scoliosis, anybody here of scoliosis, curvature of the spine? Different version, forward. So think of this as the humpback of North Carolina. That was sort of my situation. And the treatment for that, I was 13 years old at the time, the treatment for that was to wear a full body brace. So this was a big leather girdle, went around my waist, bar in the center, 2 bars up the back, and a ring around my neck to improve my posture and hold my back straight. So that was my greeting to the summer of between my 7th and 8th grade year, was to get fitted for that. About a week after I got fitted for that, we moved from Wisconsin to North Carolina. And so I went from a culture and a set of friends I knew exceptionally well to an 8th grade in a school where I was behind academically because for some reason they moved me ahead into a tougher academic class, and where I didn't know anybody and where I was the dork with the back brace walking around. That was my introduction to the state of North Carolina. And I will tell you, and I'm going to get to the faith part here real quickly, the person who got me through that was my mom. And my mom picked me up after school every day. She took me out to play golf, of all things, which neither one of us was very good at. And I learned how to play golf in the back brace. And after that, she said, why don't you start playing tennis again? So I relearned how to play tennis in the back brace. Now, if you fast forward a bit, not only did I relearn to play tennis in the back brace, I learned how to do it competitively. I played all through high school. I came to Carolina as a walk-on, made the tennis team, played for 4 years here, and my senior year I was an academic All-American in tennis. Now, all of that from my mom came down to a point of faith. She basically taught me to believe. And she taught me to believe in more than just myself, although that was certainly part of it. But she taught me to believe that circumstances are what they are. They come for a reason. There is a plan, and it's your job to deal with it. And it's your job to make that plan come true. And so for me, faith with a capital F is not just a self-confidence and a belief. I have those. I've always, for whatever reason, sort of had those. But it's the ability to recognize that God does have a place in my life. There is a plan, and He will help me all the way along. So I have to do, I'm not very good at remembering things. But as I was preparing for this, I read from Paul. This is in Colossians, the 2nd chapter. It says, insofar as I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who has loved me and given Himself up for me. That's faith. And living that faith every day is a big part of, certainly my story, but it's a big part of the story of ethics and living a faith-based life. And so my message today about faith, certainly it can be a religious thing for you, whether you're Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, whatever your faith is. That's a wonderful thing, and faith is a powerful multiplier in your life. But even if it's not for that, belief is so incredibly important. And whatever it is you're doing, whatever you're involved with, whatever your career choice is in life, whatever you want to do in business or in your personal life, faith has to be an essential component of what you do. So that's part one of my 3 what I think of as touchstones for my life and for my way to think about business and life and ethics. Touchstone 2 is perseverance. Now, perseverance is just a 3-syllable word for saying effort for some people. It's a complicated way to say, gosh, I'm willing to work hard. And there's certainly an element of that involved in this. And again, I will go back to my Xbox days. The Xbox 360 was a fabulous second product. We were doing really well in the marketplace. We went from, I don't know, about 10, 20, 15% share, maybe 20% in some markets, to 30, 35% share. We were selling lots of them. And about 7 months into the project, we started to get complaints from people who were having to return their Xbox. How many people here, I have to look at the students, I think, for this. How many people here have ever heard of the 3 rings of death? Yeah, see, you're all my customers. So we had this problem where the 3 rings on the front of the box would light up, which is a warning signal, and then the box would shut down and never work again. At first we thought this was a small problem. Pretty soon we discovered it was a medium-sized problem. And then when the development team came back and said, we can't explain it, we knew it was a large problem. Now, the technical part of this is deep. We had PhDs in physics, we had professors from Stanford, we had the chief science officers at the guys who did the chipset work for us on Xbox. We had everybody on the planet trying to help us figure out exactly what was causing this. And eventually, we figured out a set of combination of things that caused this problem. But so of course, now the question is, what do you do about it? At this point, we have produced, shipped, and sold over 8 million consoles, all of whom have this problem. And probably 90% of which are going to fail. So the team got together and sort of in an ethical dilemma within a speech, we got together at my house in the basement 7 o'clock one night, and we said, what are we going to do about this? And we ultimately concluded that the right thing to do was to extend our warranty from 1 year to 3 years and replace every box that failed. So we can talk about that separately as an ethical decision. That was about a $1.1 billion decision, which I subsequently got to announce to Wall Street and to the board of directors and a number of other people. It's not the highlight of my career, let me tell you. But the point that goes to perseverance isn't about that decision itself, because that decision was just doing the right thing, and certainly doing the right thing for our customers. The point of that decision was that the team now had to do something incredibly hard. We are producing hundreds of thousands of new boxes each week. We are running a full worldwide business in 40 countries. And the team has to figure out, with no new head count, how they are going to now take returns on millions of boxes, remanufacture, either repair or remanufacture them, ship them back to those customers, validate that we don't have people trying to cheat us on the system, because that's always a problem. If somebody sent their box back to us and forgot to take out their hard drive, which has their personal information on it, we had to make sure we took it out, put it in the new box, and sent it back to them. So this is a logistics challenge for a lifetime. And as I said, I wasn't super proud of the fact that we had to do it, but I will tell you, to this day, my proudest moment was watching the team do that. And they just figured it out. They said, we're going to get through this. We're going to use the word, persevere. And we are going to make this right. And in the course of, probably 18 months, we went through and replaced, the final tally is probably 8.5 million boxes. And I will tell you, the best description of perseverance is replacing 8.5 million units of a product with customers and not having customer satisfaction go down. It actually went up. And so that, to me, is the first half of perseverance. It's the business side of working hard, deciding you're going to overcome a problem, and then getting it done. So now let's switch gears a little bit. Because if you think of faith as a foundation, perseverance to me is the walls of ethical behavior. It's the structure around and the structure you build on top of faith. I happen to be fortunate enough to be involved in Boys and Girls Clubs of America, which is an incredible organization. And one of our board members, and he's been on the board for almost 20 years, is Denzel Washington. And Denzel Washington, to me, is perseverance taken with more than just effort. So he started in a boys' club, not from a very nice background, a kid who was in trouble. Boys and Girls Club changed his life. He went on to be very successful, but he went on to get involved in Boys and Girls Clubs and has been on our board, as I said, for 20 years. But he could easily do this as a part of his PR image. He's not a PR image guy. If you think he has a great reputation, it's all earned. It's all true. He is so dedicated to what that movement does. And it's not because he gets benefit from it, but it's because he thinks it's what he needs to do. It is his way of expressing back through all his effort and all of his perseverance and giving that back to the kids. I got a chance to spend a little over 2 hours with him personally, just chatting about life and chatting about things. And his effort in the nonprofit space is real. It's heartfelt. It's committed. And the way I think about perseverance in its full sense, it's not just effort, but it's moving from success to significance. And in his world, his success as an actor is great, but his significance in what he's doing outside of that, to me, is more important. I think of Bill Gates in the same way, obviously wildly successful as a business person. I will tell you 30 years from now, people will remember Bill and Melinda Gates for the Gates Foundation, not for Microsoft. And it's that ability, perseverance to me is that ability to move from working hard and success to significance. So this actually was a question I got asked in an interview for a scholarship I ended up not getting. So I knew the reference in the Bible to go look for. So I'm reading from James, 2nd chapter. For just as a body without a spirit is dead, so also faith without works is dead. That effort, that perseverance that brings great works is what takes faith and builds on top of it and brings something new and different to the world. So that's topic number 2, faith, perseverance, and an interesting way they work together. Let me switch to my 3rd topic, which is in some ways my favorite, which is serendipity. Now, serendipity is a fancy word for, as the dictionary would tell you, being able to make something good from something that happens accidentally. That's serendipity. And I will say that my life, most things that have happened in my life that have been good have been as a result of serendipity. And I want to share 2 of those with you. The first, again, from a business context, I'd say is just think of it as taking of an opportunity. Everything that happened in Xbox in the 10 years I worked on that was wonderful for me. It was clearly the best thing that happened to me professionally. I learned the most. I have benefited a lot from it in many different ways. It was an incredible, incredible experience. And there was no reason for that to happen. Absolutely none. When the project got started, there was a bunch of technical guys working on it. Bill and Steve liked the technical guys, but figured that they didn't have any clue how to make any money doing this. So they asked somebody who happened to work for me to run the business. This guy named Rick Thompson, still a good friend. Rick worked on the business for about 2 months, and then decided that he didn't want to do it and left Microsoft. Called me up on a Monday and said, I'm not coming back. So I was faced with the choice of taking over Xbox myself, which meant dropping the 85% of the rest of what I was doing to someone else and making this a full-time job. Now, you have to keep in mind, I don't play video games. I still don't play video games. I don't like video games necessarily. My son is crazy about video games. But the business is fascinating. And so I said yes. And I will tell you that simple act of saying yes to an opportunity that didn't need to be there changed my professional life. Absolutely, fundamentally changed my professional life. And so as you think about serendipity, those opportunities are going to, they're going to come across your path. But serendipity is more than opportunity. And so now I'll go back to my emotional side and another part of my personal life. I met my wife here through the Newman Center She was a freshman, I was a sophomore. But I met her in a kind of an odd way. I came home from tennis practice on a Friday. I lived in Granville Towers at the time. And my roommate was gone, but he'd left a note on my desk. And it said Pauline and a telephone number. That's all it said. Now, students in the room, we had rotary telephones, no voicemail, no text messaging. All right, so none of that existed. This was a message from somebody I didn't know, a name I did not recognize, with no clue what it was about. Now, the thing that saved me is I was a 19-year-old boy. And I had a girl's telephone number. So I was definitely going to call her back. So I called Pauline back and didn't know her. It turned out she went to church here, and somebody here had told her that my parents had a place down at Kiowa Island and maybe she could get a ride with me down there for the weekend. Well, I didn't get that ride. Couldn't give her that ride. But she gave me her number down at Kiowa. It makes you wonder, she hands out her phone number awfully easily. I have to talk to her about that. So we went down to Kiowa and I called her up and I went over to see her. We went for a walk on the beach. And 4 years later, we were married. You know, that's a weird thing. If she doesn't answer the telephone, literally if she doesn't answer the telephone or if I don't place the call, none of that part of my life happens. And if Father John were up here, I'm quite convinced he would be talking about serendipity in a different way. He'd be up here trying to explain the Holy Trinity to you, which is completely impossible, by the way, I will point out. But he'd be talking about the power of the Holy Spirit in your life. And for me, that presence in my life has been very strong. And everything I received as a result of meeting my wife comes from that. And so when I think about serendipity, I think about opportunity for sure. No question about that. But I also think about a life force that is guiding me, presenting opportunities, and enabling me to find the one person who I believe deep, deep, deep in my heart was the person that was meant for me. So I've now quoted, just to make this complete, I have now quoted Paul, James, and now to complete that, Natasha Bedingfield. So I think of serendipity in the following way. It is living your life with arms wide open. Today is where your life begins. The rest is still unwritten. And that's not a scripture, but it could have been. It's I'll have to figure out which book that should be, and that'll be a future project. But for me, you take those three combinations. Faith, which is the foundation. Perseverance, which is the walls that form the house. And serendipity, which breathes the life force into it. That is the framework of life that over my far too many years has come to guide me each and every day. So, you now ask me, what does all this have to do with ethics and business? So let's come full circle to the original question I asked at the beginning. Is business ethics an oxymoron? Now, I had the good fortune of having lunch this past week with the dean of the business school at Seattle University. I do a little bit of guest lecturing there. Not on this topic, by the way, on business strategy. And he said to me, so what are you speaking about? And I told him, and he said, have you read, and he gave me this long title, as I think most papal documents have a long title to them. He gave me this long title. I said, no, I haven't read it. So he gave it to me. So I want to read just a brief section from that. This one I have to put my glasses on because it's a little longer and a little smaller for me to read. And this is from the Vocation of the Business Leader. It's from the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, a report that was released, I think, a little over a year ago. And it says the following on the vocation of a business leader. Obstacles to serving the common good come in many forms. Lack of rule of law, corruption, tendencies towards greed, poor stewardship of resources. But the most significant for a business leader on a personal level is leading a divided life. The split between faith and daily business practice can lead to imbalances and misplaced devotion to worldly success. The alternative path of faith-based servant leadership provides business leaders with a larger perspective and helps to balance the demands of the business world with those of the ethical of ethical social principles illuminated for Christians by the gospel. Later on, they go on to quote from Luke, this is chapter 12, "From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded, and from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked." Now, to me, both of those topics connect my discussion of faith, perseverance, and serendipity with business ethics. Because those three concepts are how I keep my life whole. They are how I keep my life from being divided between the business world I lead most of the time and the faith-based world I have to lead all of the time. And if you want to be ethical in business, it's actually not complicated. If you don't allow yourself to be split and divided, if you have concepts like faith, perseverance, serendipity, I'm sure there are others for different people who have a different background, you can keep your ethical principles and be successful in business. I find as I've gone through my business career that, as you might expect, there are lots of difficult choices. Lots of difficult choices. And when I think about those difficult choices, I come back to two concepts. The first of those is clearly based in my faith. And that faith teaches me that you do unto others as you would have them do to you. And when I have to face an ethical decision, I ask myself, if I was on the other side of this decision, what would I want to happen? What would be my desire? How would I want to be treated? And the second of those things that I ask myself is, what does my gut tell me I should do? And when I say that, that sounds like a kind of an odd expression, but my gut is that serendipity, Holy Spirit speaking to me about what's the right thing to do. And when I add those two things up, I come back and say, okay, my job as a business leader is to do the right thing. Whatever that is. Sometimes that's no fun. Sometimes that's telling people we're going to lose $1 billion tomorrow. But we have to take care of our customers. Sometimes, and I think this is amongst the hardest things, I have to tell people that they're being let go. If you want to have a hard conversation with yourself, take somebody you know, somebody you've worked with for a long time, somebody who you know cares a lot about what they're doing, and tell them they have to leave. That is not an easy conversation. But I come back and say, okay, so what's the right thing to do? If I was that person, how would I want to be treated? The first thing I'd want is I'd want a face-to-face conversation. I'd want an honest conversation that said, this is what I see in your performance. This is what I see has happened. This is why I'm at this point where I'm at. I'd also want to have had some warning. So if I haven't my job 6 months before done my job and given them some warning that, hey, things aren't going the way they need to, then I've failed, not them. There's a whole set of things that have to happen to prepare that person to understand, maybe not like, but to understand that you're doing what you have to do and that it's the right thing for the business, for the whole, even if it's a challenging thing for the person in general. The most important part of that whole conversation is you have to face the person straight on and have the conversation and talk with them about it. And I will tell you, I am not good at those conversations. I hope to never become good at them. But it's just a small example of how, if you think in an ethical way, how if you are thoughtful about what doing the right thing means, you will in fact merge that concept of business success and ethics. I always tell people that, and I tell my kids this because they get frustrated sometimes when they see people getting ahead who they don't think are doing it the right way. And I tell them that people who take shortcuts get cut short. And I will promise you that whatever goes around does come around. And I will tell you that the long term is a very, very long time. And so for me, if you can stand back and say, I have faith, I persevere, I understand and feel and listen to serendipity and the Spirit in my life, you can tackle any business problem. In fact, you can tackle any personal problem. And you can tackle it in a way that you walk away with your head held high and feeling strong about the behavior and your approach from an ethical perspective.